It was a Sunday evening in August, and it was sweltering hot. I was watching TV and waiting for my girlfriend Lori to get home from work when I got a text from Notify NYC. It said the city was opening up cooling centers the next day because of the heat. The next thing I knew, the television and the lights all went dark. It was a blackout. For some people, that might mean grabbing flashlights and sitting on the stoop with the neighbors until it was all over. But for me, it's a very big deal. I use a ventilator because my lungs can't take in enough oxygen on their own. I use it periodically during the day and to sleep safely every night. Without a steady source of electricity to keep the ventilator batteries charged, I could be in serious trouble. And that's exactly why I have a backup plan. Not long after the power went out, my home health aide Hector contacted me.
I had gotten a text from Notify NYC saying that the power could be out for an extended period. I know that Kevin's ventilator requires power, so I thought of him immediately. I called Kevin right away, and I was relieved to hear that the blackout hadn't cut out his cell service. I had a few clients in the affected area, but I wanted to head over and check on Kevin first. He insisted he was fine. He reminded me that we've planned for this kind of thing. When I first started working with Kevin, my company signed up for the NYC Advanced Warning System, so I get tips about how to help clients in an emergency. We also set up battery backup power for his ventilator and packed a go bag. He keeps all his important documents together, including the make and model of his ventilator, just in case he needs to evacuate without it. He even has a tire repair kit for his wheelchair.
So good about this.
Kevin urged me to check on my other client, Colleen, first. He was really worried about her being without power. She lives right nearby. Everybody in the neighborhood knows Colleen. She's like a force of nature, always on the go, volunteering at her church, helping at the senior center. I get tired just hearing what she does each day. But a few years ago, Colleen was diagnosed with kidney disease. And now, 3 times a week, I hook her up to a dialysis machine in her apartment. Kevin and I both knew that she was scheduled for a treatment that night. And Colleen doesn't have backup power. Kevin's always telling us how important it is to plan for emergencies, but it seems like Colleen's always too busy taking care of other people to think of herself. After talking to Kevin, I decided to check on Colleen.
While Hector headed to Colleen's place, I contacted Mom and Dad, who live out of town, to let them know the situation. After I hung up, Lori came home and set up the lights from our emergency kit.
But I still got worried.
How are you?
I'm good.
Before I knew it, Hector and Colleen showed up at my house.
Oh. Hey.
All right, you're the one who's always... And of course, Colleen brought dinner. That's typical Colleen. Always busy thinking about everyone else. But I was really worried about what would happen if Colleen couldn't get her dialysis treatment.
We were playing cards, passing the time, when the power company called Kevin. He had registered with them as a life-sustaining equipment customer when he moved to the apartment, so the company knew that his power was a priority. It was good to know that they were aware of the situation. It got later and later and still no power. I offered to take Colleen to the dialysis center because if she went too long between treatments, the potassium in her blood would get higher and higher, and that can lead to a heart attack. But that stubborn lady kept brushing it off, saying not to worry. The power would come on in time to do her treatment at home. Given the situation, we didn't want her spending the night alone. So Kevin and Lori invited her to stay the night.
When we woke up the next morning, there was still no electricity, and Colleen wasn't looking so good. She seemed tired, not her usual self. When Hector showed up with a fresh battery for my ventilator, I made him take Colleen straight to the dialysis center. She needed that treatment ASAP. Later in the day, after Lori left for work, some volunteers from the city's public engagement unit knocked on my door. They asked if I needed assistance leaving my apartment and told me that there was a commodity distribution point set up at a park right down the street. Hector said he'd be sure to stop by.
Take care, folks. Kevin and I let them know that we were fine, that Kevin had a support system and was prepared with backup battery power for his ventilator, so it was safer for him to stay here. The commodity distribution point was a great help. It was right here in the neighborhood, and they had food, water, and other supplies. When I got back to Kevin's place, I let him know that they set up a station for him to charge his ventilator and backup batteries if he needed to. Luckily, it turned out that it wasn't necessary because the power came back on just a few hours later.
It was a pretty intense time, but when I think about it, it all worked out in the end. Because we had a plan. We support each other, and we've talked about what we need to do ahead of time. Sooner or later, emergencies like this do happen. And for me, for Colleen, and for thousands of other people who depend on life-sustaining equipment, not being prepared can have terrible consequences. I have finally convinced Colleen to get backup power for her dialysis machine. And now, she comes over every weekend for a game of cards.